I would definitely say that since the passage of the Reform and Integrity Act, EB-5 has become a better program, not just because of the benefits that clients that are in the US are immediately getting, which is the ability to adjust status, but more because the integrity reforms that were put in, the fund administration reforms that were put in, and of course the added benefit of rural priority processing. So I think that this change in the program has been remarkable and really positive. Very high level though, the US government wants to be convinced of two things. The money were sourced using legal activities and that taxes have been paid. So source of funds talks about how the money was generated, and path of funds talks about how the money moved through your account. So definitely the most common source is ordinary income, which is your salary that we touched upon previously. W-2 or T4s in Canada exclusively are not enough, right? Visibility into your bank statement is extremely important because the government's looking for accumulation of wealth. The next one is capital gains, which we talked about, could be in the form of, stocks that were purchased and sold, or RSUs. The next source is gift or inheritance from family and friends. The one thing I want to touch on here is when this question is asked, if I can take a gift or if I can use inheritance money, the answer is yes. However, most of the times clients call us assuming that they can bypass source of funds. That is not the case. The same scrutiny that goes into an investor's source of funds goes into the donor's source of funds as well. And the final point is loan from family or friends or companies. Any loan that is sourced from friends, families, privately owned companies, publicly owned companies, we need to source the source just as if you were as an individual. Prior to March 15, 2022, if you were in the US, you could only adjust status after your 526 petition was approved, which is the EB-5 petition with the source of funds packet. The good thing with the Reform and Integrity Act is it allowed clients to file the EB-5 I-526E application concurrently with their green card application, the work permit application, and travel permit application if their country of birth was current in the US visa bulletin. The major benefit that my H-1B clients or my Canadian clients that are here on E2 or TN or F1 have gotten from adjustment of status is it stops the clock. What do I mean by that? Once you file your adjustment of status application along with your EB-5 application, you are no longer beholden to your H-1B visa, your TN visa, your F1 visa, your E2 visa. Even if you do change your status to B1, B2, 6 months may not be enough of a time to find another job. However, if clients can get the money together, file an EB-5 petition with adjustment of status, the 60-day clock stops. You now have the ability to stay in the US and look for jobs. Any of those measures can be used to stop the clock and continue staying in the US. Under the old program, you had no ability to do that. You had to leave the country, hope for EB-5 adjudication, get counselor processed, and then re-enter the country. So again, the beauty of EB-5 today is the ability to concurrently file if your country of birth is current under the US visa bulletin. The one thing I do get asked, Sam, quite a bit is, and I do want to clarify this, is there a difference between, investing in rural or high unemployment TEA with EAD processing times? No, the EAD processing times, whether you go rural or high unemployment TEA, are consistent. They're the same. Government doesn't care. Another misinformation that's out there that I've heard is that if you have a 956F approved on the project, you're going to get your EAD AP much faster. That is not true. EAD and AP adjudication have nothing to do with your source of funds and have nothing to do whether your project is 956F approved whatsoever. Government looks at totality of circumstances again. So it's very, very important to, even if you're having conversations with regional centers, not sign any documentation until you hit the 90-day mark. The E2 definitely takes the longest to plan for and to file and to get approved. An E2 visa is basically a business visa where you're telling the government, I'm going to spend, and the threshold is $100,000, at least $100,000 on this visa. I'm going to, for example, acquire the Subway franchise, spend $100,000. After doing that, there's going to be enough money to pay myself and a couple of other employees, and this will be a successful business venture. Sam, what we've heard constantly is clients wanting to do E2 to EB-5 conversion in direct projects. That works very rarely, and the problem with that approach is job creation. So the fail-safe approach is keep your E2 business separate from your EB-5 investment. Rely on regional center investment where job creation is solely based on dollars spent, and use that approach. One of the questions I would ask if I was the investor is, have you ever represented a regional center? Have you ever done documentation for the regional center? Would there be any scenario in which you would be conflicted, you would have to withdraw your representation from my case because you worked with a regional center? How many files have you filed? Have you filed under the old rules, new rules? If one particular attorney has just worked with one regional center, you have a red flag, right? We've filed with all 10 regional centers across the country. It doesn't matter to us where the investor goes, and that's how it should be. We're only looking out for the client's best interest. We're not telling them where to invest. In terms of regional center, the golden rule I tell the clients to follow is always request all the offering documents. All I say to them is, one, if a project is unwilling to share those documents, that should be your first red flag to begin with. The client has the right to look at these documents. The third thing I recommend to my clients is we urge the clients to ask questions in writing. And finally, the investor should not be forced to use a particular attorney. If the regional center says, we have exclusively partnered with this attorney and we will only work with this attorney, I think that's a red flag.